You are witnessing a broken heart that is allowed to bleed openly. That is what we are witnessing.
That's not what I'm witnessing.
That is what you are witnessing.
I'm witnessing an entitled, arrogant,
trauma.
bitter, twisted little man who's had his claws dug into by a manipulative LA lady, and the pair of them have got on a mission, a wrecking ball mission, to enrich themselves by abusing the very institution which bestowed the titles to them, which they used to make money.
It all began with a video. Not just any video, but something so strange, so jarringly out of place, that it hit social media like a slap in the face. Meghan Markle, dressed in black, was dancing in what appeared to be a hospital room. She wasn't just dancing, she was twerking, laughing, vibing to lyrics about being a baby mama and demanding child support, while Prince Harry stood awkwardly beside her. The entire scene played out like a parody skit, not a moment from the life of someone who once carried the title of Duchess of Sussex. This wasn't just uncomfortable. It was bizarre, a video that shattered the carefully cultivated image of privacy, poise, and royalty. And what followed wasn't just backlash, it was a public unraveling. Before we go deeper, if this moment shocked you too, make sure to hit subscribe, because this rabbit hole gets darker, deeper, and far more unsettling than most people ever expected. At first, it was just memes. The internet did what it always does: dissect, mock, and memify. But then something changed. A question that had long hovered in online forums, whispered quietly by skeptics, suddenly took center stage. Was Meghan Markle ever actually pregnant? This wasn't new. The rumors have been around for years, especially surrounding her. First pregnancy with Archie and later with Lilibet. The moon bump theories, the folding belly clips, the speculation that maybe, just maybe, a surrogate was involved. Major outlets had always dismissed these as fringe conspiracies. Tabloid fodder, internet noise. But that video? That changed everything, because now the whispers weren't just coming from anonymous forums or royal gossip threads, they were coming from voices within the media. Prominent figures like Piers and Jeremy Kyle, never ones to shy away from controversy, began openly questioning the footage. The video wasn't just tone deaf. It reignited something the media had been too scared to touch: the possibility that the public had been misled on something far more serious than PR blunders or staged paparazzi shots. Jeremy Kyle, in a now viral broadcast, didn't hold back. He called the video a disgrace to the monarchy. He described it as looking like a lap dancing club for pregnant women. His tone wasn't just mockery, it was disbelief, anger, the kind that comes when people feel like they've been duped. But the real concern? It wasn't just about optics, it was about something far more fundamental. In the United Kingdom, royal children must be born of the body to legally remain in the line of succession. If, hypothetically, Meghan had used a surrogate and chosen to hide that fact, it wouldn't just be a betrayal of public trust, it would be a constitutional issue. One that calls into question Archie and Lilibet's eligibility for royal titles and their place in the succession. That's why this video struck such a nerve. People began analyzing every frame. That bump, it didn't move naturally. It sat oddly low. It looked stiff. Meghan was squatting, bending, even twerking, things that women in late-term pregnancy usually avoid. Medical professionals began weighing in. Nurses, doctors, and mothers shared their thoughts. That's not how a real bump moves. That's not a labor and delivery room. That IV line isn't placed correctly. The commentary wasn't vague. It was clinical, specific, and it came from people who've been in actual delivery rooms. Even longtime Meghan defenders found themselves unusually quiet. The usual flood of counter-arguments and defenses just wasn't there. And the silence was deafening. But it wasn't just the video's visuals. It was the mood, the tone. Meghan, who once claimed to have fled the UK to protect her family's privacy, now appeared in a staged hospital clip, dancing for the world, broadcasting intimate, moments that felt scripted and theatrical. The music was loud, the lighting dramatic, the lyrics provocative. Everything about the video screamed performance, not motherhood. It didn't help that Piers was on a rampage. "We're about 2 months away from a sex tape," he posted, on X, half joking, half condemning. But the comments spoke volumes. It wasn't just about outrage. It was about how far the public perception of Meghan and Harry had shifted. What was once a couple seeking sanctuary from media cruelty now looked more like influencers chasing relevance with viral bait. And then it got worse. Clips began to resurface. Old footage showing Meghan's bump folding unnaturally as she sat, shifting shape as she moved. One viral post featured a split screen, Meghan in the dancing video, and Meghan on stage years earlier with a completely different bump shape. "Tell me again how this is the same pregnancy," the caption read. Meanwhile, public figures outside the UK weighed in. Alexandra Marshall, a constitutional monarchy ambassador from Australia, looked visibly disturbed. She called the video cringeworthy and undignified. But more importantly, she warned that it handed ammunition to anti-monarchists around the world. Proof, in her words, that the modern monarchy had become a circus. But perhaps the most unsettling analysis came not from a doctor, not from a journalist, but from a mathematician. Professor Norman Fenton, a seasoned academic, reviewed the video and declared plainly, "This bump doesn't behave like a real pregnancy." He wasn't sensational, he didn't speculate. He simply pointed out the inconsistencies, logically, clinically, and that's when things got darker still. The institution stayed quiet, while the public roared, while journalists began digging, while social media lit up with side-by-side comparisons. Official channels said nothing. Buckingham Palace, once quick to refute rumors or clarify misreported details, maintained total radio silence. No comment from the Sussex camp, no press release, no attempt to explain what the video was, when it was recorded, or even why it was shared. Instead, media outlets quietly shifted gears. Articles about Meghan's beautiful birthday message to Lilibet stayed pinned to the tops of websites, as if nothing else was happening. Comment sections were locked, critical responses were filtered out. And yet, behind the scenes, something very different was happening. Reporters began texting whistleblowers. Journalists started making calls. Sources within the Royal Press Corps admitted they were finally asking the question that had been off limits for years. Was this all staged? If it was, why? Why release this video now? Why dredge up something so potentially damaging, especially at a time when Meghan and Harry's popularity was already in sharp decline? Was it a distraction? A failed PR stunt? A last-ditch grab for relevance? Or was it something more calculated? As speculation grew, so did public pressure. Online petitions exploded across platforms, not just demanding answers, but demanding action. One called for Meghan and Harry's children to be removed from the official royal website until medical proof of birth could be provided. Another petition demanded a formal inquiry by Buckingham Palace into the circumstances of both pregnancies. A third went even further, urging a temporary suspension of the children's titles until legal documentation was reviewed. And through it all, Meghan remained silent. No statement, no denial, not even a passive Instagram quote about rising above the hate. The silence was loud, and it spoke volumes. Then came a rumor, leaked, unconfirmed, but widespread, that Prince Harry was considering dropping the Windsor name and adopting his mother's maiden name, Spencer. The implications were explosive. Would this be a symbolic break from the crown? A distancing from the Sussex brand? Or was it something even deeper, a quiet acknowledgement of mounting pressure? Royal insiders were reportedly furious. King Charles was described as deeply disappointed. Prince William, meanwhile, was said to be enraged, not because of the video itself, but because it dragged the entire institution back into scandal at the very moment he was trying to modernize the monarchy's image. According to one biographer, William privately referred to the video as a disgrace to everything Mom stood for. And within the palace walls, the mood shifted. Staffers who once protected the couple's image began speaking off the record. One was quoted saying, "We've protected them for too long. This isn't about media bias anymore. It's about national trust." Books were being rewritten, biographies updated. Chapters that once painted the couple as victims were now exploring the possibility that the public and the crown had been misled. Then, something happened no one saw coming. Small handful of media anchors who had previously defended Meghan began to turn. Their tones softened. Their certainty vanished. One remarked, "If this video was meant to prove something, it has only raised more doubt." Another said, "The problem isn't that Meghan danced. The problem is that she looked like she was playing a character. And the stakes of that character are real." The shift was subtle, but unmistakable. This wasn't tabloid chatter anymore. It had gone mainstream, and yet still, the silence continued. No interviews, no explanations, no clarifications. The result? Public opinion didn't just sour, it curdled. People stopped laughing. What began as mockery evolved into something darker. Discomfort, distrust, and most of all, the feeling that something was being hidden, not just by Meghan and Harry, but by the entire royal establishment. The conversation had changed. It wasn't about whether a bump looked strange. It wasn't about Meghan's dance moves or PR stunts. It was about credibility. As the dust settled, what remained wasn't just a scandal. It was a gaping wound in the monarchy's already fragile relationship with the public. And in that silence, the eerie, deliberate silence from Meghan, from Harry, from the palace, the theories didn't just survive, they flourished. Because when the truth is unclear, the void gets filled with doubt. This wasn't just about internet sleuths. Legal experts began weighing in, pointing to constitutional frameworks, centuries-old traditions, and the unbending rule that royal heirs must be born of the body. If Meghan had used a surrogate and concealed it, and that's still an if, then Archie and Lilibet's titles could be in jeopardy. Their very place in the royal order could be erased. But here's the most damning part. Even the possibility that such a deception could happen and be protected was enough to set the institution on fire. A monarchy cannot survive on celebrity, flair. It survives on trust, on tradition, on transparency. And in this moment, it had failed on all three fronts. Senior palace aides, who once pushed back against every rumor and PR misstep, were reportedly fed up. "This has gone too far," one said. Another reportedly told a journalist off the record, "We've lost the room. People aren't laughing anymore. They're asking if this was all a lie." And they weren't wrong. The video wasn't just a bizarre moment of misjudgment, it became a symbol, a boiling point, where years of unspoken questions veiled. Accusations and institutional silence collided into one public reckoning, a moment where decorum gave way to disbelief. For many monarchists and royal watchers, this was the moment the magic broke. No longer was Meghan simply misunderstood or overexposed. She was seen by a growing number as someone who used royal privilege as a costume, as a brand, a stage. And what made it worse? She never said a word. Not a single post, not a single quote, no press conference, no documentary response. Nothing. It was like the video had never existed, except that it had, and it was burned into the public's mind. Every view, every comment, every paused screenshot and pixelated frame, all became part of a larger cultural memory. Not just of Meghan's choices, but of the monarchy's failure to respond. There was no course correction, no transparency, no reckoning. And the longer that silence held, the more people stopped believing, not just in Meghan, but in the whole machine. Because this wasn't about twerking, or hospital lighting, or even bump conspiracies. It was about the slow erosion of trust, the kind of trust that takes generations to build and moments to destroy. And now, that destruction feels irreversible. The people who once cheered Meghan's entry into the royal family, who believed in the modern, diverse, empathetic future she symbolized, they're gone, replaced by cynics, by critics, by disappointed. Former fans asking the same question over and over, if this is what they're willing to show us, what are they still hiding? And so, the monarchy enters yet another chapter of controversy, not over bloodlines or wars or treaties, but over a viral video and the silence that followed it. A silence louder than any denial. And maybe that's the most tragic part, because if you can't believe in the fairy tale anymore, then all that's left is reality. And reality, it turns out, is far more disturbing than fiction. If you're still watching, it means you're one of the few who cares enough to question what's real. And that matters. So don't stop here. Subscribe, share this video, and keep the pressure on. Because in the end, truth only survives when people demand it.